Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to NewCity. I have done a thing. My city has made it to above 1 million people, and I've got the Science Museum to prove it. It's been quite the adventure, and it has not taken a small amount of time either. You can see I'm in year 2012, and I did some calculations a while back, and each year in normal mode takes 96 minutes. In ridiculous mode, it takes 20 minutes. I did run a bunch of the earlier years when I was growing from a few thousand up through a few 100,000 at ridiculous mode, which is the one step faster than normal. But since then, I think once you get above 200,000 or 300,000, you can't really run at ridiculous mode anymore. It starts to cause other problems. So it has, I don't know exactly how long it's taken, but it's been a little while. But it's been fun. It's an adventure, and the city's continuing to go. I'm not reaching any limits. It keeps on growing, and the cool thing, once you get up to a city this size, I don't really have to do a lot more. I can keep expanding my residential zones. You can see the demand for other businesses is pretty low, but with 1 million people, if I rezone stuff, it fills in pretty quickly, even though it shows the demand as being pretty low. In terms of performance, it's really not too bad. It's holding at 30 frames per second here. If I zoom into a less densely populated area, it speeds up. I can hold at 60 frames. If I scroll over here, yeah, it's just when I'm zoomed out that the frame rate goes down. So I think, I'm gonna let it keep growing. We'll see how big it gets before things really start to break. So if you've seen any of my previous videos, this is just the continuation of the latest video, which I got to 100. I think the video is just over 800,000. The previous biggest one was 600,000, and I didn't have any transit really set up in the city, and so I was just having a lot of cars on the roads causing problems. But what you can see, vehicles on the road here, this is a good indicator that shows you how many cars you've got, and it's pretty steady, max of 3.1 thousand. I know from having caused problems with the other city, it maxes at 60,000, and once that happens, everything's basically broke. So I haven't gotten anywhere near that, and it's all due to my transit layout. So I did show this in the previous video. I've expanded it a little bit since, but if you look at my transit layout, each one of these lines is a train line, and there's a small bus line here that is not working super well, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. I'll show that in a second. The train lines, you can see the white area is coverage by transit, and I've got basically the whole city. I haven't gone into the agricultural or industrial spaces with the transit. I don't know if that would benefit or not. If you do know, please leave me a comment, and I can just extend these out and run some horizontal routes, and heck, maybe even cut down on the traffic even more. This is on a 100 by 100 map. I just did the super flat map because this was really an experiment just to play with the simulation. I wasn't trying to create a realistic city or a aesthetically pleasing city by any means. I just wanted to see how dense and big in terms of population I could get it. And I did want to get to 1 million. There was that amenity hanging out there where you get a science museum when you get to 1 million, so I just really wanted to get there, and we got there. Clearly you can see the science museum amenity has not gotten a lot of attention in terms of aesthetics, because I assume not a lot of people are placing it, which that's fine. It's it took some unrealistic city design choices to get here, and I wouldn't expect that would be your average NewCity player. So in terms of what I did to get here, I think I've pretty well covered it in previous videos, but just really quickly, I have a pattern that I use for the residential layout. It's all based around traffic circles. The closest you can do to that in NewCity with the current features is a square like this. The cool thing about this, if you do one-way squares, you can go back over them and remove the stop signs or stoplights that show up at the intersection. So maybe I can demonstrate what happens. We'll place, just make sure I don't have any here to make this easy. Nope. Yeah, so here's one. So when you place a one-way diamond like this, or a traffic circle, and then there are two-way roads in between the two, you can see there is a stop sign here at this intersection, and there should be, well, I've already removed them here, but you can see there's one here and one here as well. The cool thing, I can go back over this. If I select the 4-lane and double click on the intersection, it will modify it and just remove the stop sign. It doesn't add stoplights because of how this traffic pattern works here, which is very cool. And so that was not an insignificant amount of work to go over all of these intersections and double click them to remove the stop signs, but I did it anyway. So all of these, the traffic flows very smoothly. There are not a lot of cars on the road, and it really keeps the average travel time down, which I haven't been looking at in a while, but let's pull that up here. Transportation, average travel time. Yeah, so it spikes a little bit above an hour every once in a while. There have been some hiccups where it jumped up to a few hours, but for the most part, it's been down under an hour. The reason that you'd want to pay attention to this is if it goes up above 4 hours, it's going to affect your city's ability to grow. And typically, if it's up that high, that indicates you've got some serious traffic backups happening around your city. And you can see even in the most dense portion of the city, things are flowing very smoothly. There's just not a lot of cars on the road. And that is all because of the transit. So you can see this is where everybody's traveling on these trains. Look, 234 people on a train. Getting through the university is not great. Ooh, you can see this stop has backed up quite a bit. Ooh, that stop is really backed up. Now, this was a mistake I made. I did a layout for the university here and didn't leave any space for train stops. I didn't anticipate the size that the train stop would need to be. So you can see the train just popped up there. It takes up over one small grid square worth of space. And so in order to have the train look nice when it shows up, it'll still work if you make a smaller train stop, but this is really the ideal size in terms of making it look nice when a train shows up. And that requires almost 3 grid spaces, maybe even almost 4, in order to fit that in and then get back underground, which is what's happening here. You can see here is the underground layout showing how all this works. So I've got the train stop here, and it goes right underground, goes on to the next train stop. There is one line here, this ducks under the university the whole way through. And I think I'll probably do some demolishing and rearrangement of the university. Now that the city's so dang big, I don't think that's going to hurt anything if I demolish the university for a couple years while that happens. But you can see here the bus stop. All these buses are just filled up with people and getting backed up. The reason this happens is the buses load and unload people much more slowly than the trains. The train, it can load and unload the full 200 some odd people very quickly, whereas the bus can only hold 50 people, and you can see it unloads much more slowly, and then it's going to load people up slowly as well. There it goes. Unloads people first and then loads people back on, and it just takes a little while. So if I was able to figure out a way to extend this train, get a stop here in the university somewhere, extend it on throughout to here, and then same with this line. If I could get a stop for it just right smack in the middle of the university, I think that would fix my bus issue that I've got going on here. So that's probably why the average travel time is starting to spike here, because these people, we've got a couple stops with several thousand people waiting. So they might be waiting for a little while. So I've got the residential zone all based off of this pattern. There are, along the main north-south routes, we'll call these, I've got office space near the most dense areas, some office space inside the traffic circles along the dense area of town. Then commercial space, so just a little smattering of mixed use spread out again along the north-south routes. There's a bunch of schools, graduate schools, magnet schools, opportunity schools, all spread all throughout here. Let's see if I can see those. Yeah, you can see everywhere. I've got some institution of education placed throughout here. See, how are we doing in terms of prosperity? Very prosperous in the dense areas, not so much out in the burbs. Land value is really driven up by density, you can see. And there is my density. Don't seem to be any areas of 10. Everything is 9. And it's spreading slowly outward. Nope, no 10. Community looks good in a few areas. Community is really affected by these amenities that are placed around. I've definitely got enough money to just go place a bunch of amenities all around and make people happier. So I may do that. Maybe that might drive growth a little bit more. So for the last several years, growth has been a little stagnant. Let's look at, I don't know if stagnant, just steady, and it felt slower than it was in the past. I don't know if that's really the case or not. Yeah, there was a nice period here where things were growing very, very quickly, and then it's really just been steady, linear growth ever since. Which I guess that's fine. Here you can see in the early 70s I built the transit system, and that's been getting used more and more. The higher education population has been growing quite a bit ever since I got the university placed in. There you can see there's a few spikes of average travel time jumping up. It's been increasing. Kind of the baseline has been steadily increasing, but fairly slowly. Vehicles on the road, same. There are a couple spikes in there, but really nothing to be too concerned about. Percent with no education. This is one thing early on in the game that I always pay pretty close attention to. Early on in the game, depending how you want to play with your finances, schools are one thing you have to make careful decisions about because they are expensive and they have high recurring costs. And so you can very easily get your finances into the red where you're spending more than you're making every year. But with this high of a population, that's really not even a concern. I've got 22 billion. I keep bumping down the property tax and the sales tax. It's at 2% and 3-cent sales tax. These were the highest I went, I think, was 6.5% on the property tax and 6 or 7 cents on the sales tax as well. Typically, in the few cities I've built that have gotten really big, the times that I'm most constrained on finances are when I'm building the university. Everything's very expensive there, and they have high recurring costs as well. So, yeah, I've had to be careful with the finances. Typically, I'll take out a loan for some period of time, place a bunch of the university that gets me pretty far into debt, and then I'll just go have a snack while the simulation runs and it pays off the loan. I don't really build much else during that time. I think that may kind of conclude my adventure into building a big ridiculous city in NewCity. I think probably the next thing I'll want to do is build a more aesthetically pleasing, a nice looking city, maybe base it off of a real city. There are definitely people in the Discord that have done a much better job of that than I can. I even saw one where somebody had gotten to 800 or 900,000 with an actual city, not a silly optimize the simulation type city, putting city in quotes. But anyway, I hope maybe this was helpful. A little bit shorter of a video here, just to show off what things look like when you get to 1 million. You can definitely do it in NewCity. I encourage you to try and do a better job than I have. Please leave me your tips and pointers in the comments. I try to respond to every comment and integrate any good feedback into what I'm doing. So I'll probably fix the university bus chaos that's happening and let things grow. Probably since 800,000, I've just let the simulation run as I'm doing other things. So it's not not required a lot of active participation or developing things on my end. So I'm more than happy to just let that keep going and see where it goes from here. So thanks for watching. As always, I'm Zombie Greedo. Han shot first.